The third area of weakness is political, and in particular, the search for alibis. Instead of learning from best practice, there is a continual search for alibis. There has been collusion and groupthink. People say class sizes should be smaller, although the research suggests that this matters only in the early years. People say it's a matter of funding. Though, as Michael Davidson of the OECD pointed out when the PISA results were published, we are amongst the highest spenders in the OECD. Mr. Davidson said, and I agree with him, we know there isn't a particularly strong relationship between levels of expenditure and performance. He said what's more important, and is very evident from the data, is how that money is spent. This search for alibis and excuses is a continuous distraction. We know what works, and we should apply it. The next set of challenges are departmental and relate to decels. We've had a lot of initiatives. We've had a lot of change. We have a department which saw several quangos merge with it in 2006. I do not know if those mergers were ever culturally integrated. I do know that a single departmental culture has yet to emerge. My impression as a minister is of a department that has been culturally and geographically fragmented without a clear focus. There has been a lack of alignment of performance measurement, including qualifications in particular. Implementation of policy has been weak. Policies to support and deliver the curriculum need to be properly embedded. The decision to introduce the skills framework on a non-statutory basis is a good example of this weakness. Historically, civil servants have been strong on policy design, but less good at policy implementation and embedding. However, under Dr. Emma Roberts' leadership, a clear focus and sense of direction is developing. I've made it clear, and I repeat it today, that I expect the focus of the department to be one which seeks to raise standards of performance for all, so that all can reach their potential. Performance will be our driver. All other matters, curriculum, qualifications, professional development, governor support, capital programs, will be subservient to that. Then there are the structural challenges. I've said repeatedly, I would not have invented 22 local education authorities. I now believe that the fragmentation of education authorities in the mid-1990s was one of the contributing factors for the downturn in educational performance a decade later, as effective challenge and support was lost in many parts of the system, and time, energy, and resource was dissipated. As Estin has reported, strategic management is good or better in only a half of local authorities. Then there is inspection. I believe that the reforms that Estin has executed in the Common Inspection Framework are fundamental. But for schools and local authorities, they will be challenging. Early evidence from the Common Inspection Framework's first term is of significantly higher numbers of schools requiring extra help. I do not believe that our inspection framework was fit for purpose until very recently. The 2004 to 2010 cycle had too much focus on national curriculum subjects. It was outsourced. It made judgments against over 700 tick-box grades. There was no follow-up for mediocre or weaker schools. There was a complacency about judgments, particularly in the primary sector. The next area is school improvement. The school effectiveness framework has been an important driver for change, but it needs sharpening and streamlining. We have built collective capacity through professional learning communities across Wales. The professional learning communities can offer grounded, practical examples of what works to teachers and head teachers as to how they source best practice. The implementation of best practice is essential. Those who refuse to implement it will be told, adopt or justify. We need to move from theory to practice. By the end of this school year, the school effectiveness framework will have been fully implemented and professional learning communities will be in operation all across Wales. We will be far more prescriptive about what those professional learning communities can focus on. They will not be allowed to be laissez-faire in their operation. They will have a clear focus on literacy and numeracy and tackling disadvantage. We will also be ensuring that data is used properly and spread widely. Data empowers people. People need information on how their schools are performing. They also need to understand how their school is performing against the best in class. That doesn't mean a return to league tables. It does mean family of schools data being available so that all schools can learn from the best in class and high standards can be set by heads and by governors. It means robust self-evaluation and rigorous benchmarking. It means being honest about the performance of your school. It means learning from the best, and it means embedding best practice. Parents and young people have a right to expect the best, but they may not know what the best is. Without data, they certainly won't. And it is those in the most deprived communities who have the most to lose. I do not accept the socio-economic determinism of those who say that because we have major challenges of deprivation, we cannot make progress. On the table in my office is a piece of Welsh slate engraved with the words of the great Welsh cultural critic Raymond Williams, which reads, "To be truly radical is to make hope possible rather than despair convincing." We will set high standards and seek to reach them, not accept excuses and alibis for poor performance. The next weakness is measurement. We have kidded ourselves about measurement for too long. While statistics have suggested that we do better than England at Key Stage 2 but then suffer a dip at Key Stage 3, I'm afraid I'm not convinced we're comparing like with like. I hear too many stories from secondary head teachers about the quality of entry from cluster primary schools and the inconsistent quality of teacher assessment. Estin makes the same point and has reported on this. Then, later in the system, the reports from FE principals about the quality of basic skills of their entrance from schools are shocking, simply shocking. Meanwhile, work-based learning providers tell me too many stories about their entrants arriving without evidence of the qualifications they have meant to have undertaken at school. Abandoning SATs was not meant to be a signal for anything goes. As Anne Keane has said to me, "I'm concerned about the lack of robustness in the assessment of learning at the end of key stages, at transition points between primary and secondary schools, and between secondary schools and post-16 education and training." She confirms that in Year 7 at the beginning of Key Stage 3 or in post-16 provision when all students are screened to identify basic skills needs, for instance, gaps in skills are identified that belie the level of attainment at the end of the previous stage. She says around 80% of pupils at the end of primary education attain the expected level, but typically on entry to secondary school, 40% or more of the same cohorts are identified as having some basic skills needs. Nor are we stretching the brightest to their utmost. What matters most, of course, is what happens in the classroom. Teaching quality matters. We need to harness the existing leadership. Teaching makes a difference. Leadership of schools makes a difference. The setting of high aspirations for all, the focus on every individual, the delivery of performance, all young people able to read and write at the standard for their age. I expect all teachers to be teachers of literacy. PISA has demonstrated that our classrooms are not delivering for our young people. Too few are able to apply the skills we are learning. We need to look again at initial teacher training and at continuous professional development, but we will be more prescriptive. We are ending the oversupply of teachers. We have been reducing numbers for 7 years. We've already reduced the number being trained from 2,470 a year to just over 1,800 a year. That's a 27% reduction. The proportion of postgraduate teacher training places has grown to 78% of the total this year. The high number of training places on offer has failed to reinforce teaching status by making entry challenging and opens up the opportunity for schools to recruit cheaper NQTs rather than experienced professionals. Induction of teachers is variable in quality and probably insufficiently rigorous. Only 8 trainees have failed induction since 2003. Finally, there is accountability. The removal of league tables was intended to stop a distorting competition. It was not a signal that we do not have a view on the performance of the school system. We do. Young people have a right to expect high standards. To what extent are governors really engaged across Wales in driving up performance? To what extent are they essentially dependent on the head teacher for their information? How many head teachers are sharing the family schools data with their governors? How is that being built into school development plans? To what extent are local authorities empowering governors to understand and use data? Is the current system for head teacher review adequate? Is there effective alignment between governors' appraisal and real improvements in performance? Do we need to align head teacher performance management with the local authority improvement role? We need to take the best practice from the local authorities which have a forensic approach to performance. Local authorities must lead governors. This is an important systemic set of questions, and I will now turn to what we intend to do about them.